In the borderlands of Ferrum, the trees don't just grow, they remember. Welcome to the Enchanted Grove, a living labyrinth where every leaf is a secret and every root is a heartbeat. Today, we follow Silas, a mender of broken souls, as he ventures into a woods that is starving for emotion. But he isn't alone. Between a clockwork knight, a princess of thorns, and a thief with a bag of stolen hearts, the fate of two worlds is about to be stitched back together. Sit back, dim the lights, and prepare for Hearts of the Enchanted Grove. The Petal Collector. The air in the borderlands didn't carry the scent of pine or earth. It smelled like old velvet and bitter almonds. Silas knelt in the dirt, his fingers stained a deep, bruised purple from the lament lilies he had been harvesting. He carried a small, velvet-lined box on his hip. Inside were heart shards, tiny, pulsing fragments of crystal that vibrated with the emotions of people who couldn't bear to feel them anymore. A shard of grief glowed a dull grey. A shard of courage sparked with a frantic orange light. Silas was a mender. He didn't fight with swords, he fought with empathy. "You're going in there, aren't you?" a voice rasped from the shadows of a nearby shack. Silas didn't look up. He adjusted his leather spectacles. The grove called. Someone left their heart at the center, and the trees are choking on the sorrow. "If I don't retrieve it, the forest will expand another mile by morning, swallowing your farm with it." The old man stepped into the light. His chest was sunken, a jagged scar where his own heartstone had been removed years ago. He was one of the empty. "Don't let the silk spiders catch your scent, Mender," the old man warned. "They don't want your blood. They want your joy. It's the sweetest thing in these woods." Silas stood, his cloak billowing in a wind that seemed to blow from 3 directions at once. He stepped toward the wall of mist that marked the edge of the Enchanted Grove. As his boot touched the first silver root, the trees groaned, a sound like 1,000 violins being tuned at once. The grove was hungry, and Silas was full of feeling. The tangled company. Silas hadn't walked 100 yards into the mist before the grove began to play its tricks. The path behind him didn't just vanish. It folded into the canopy above. The silence was broken by a rhythmic clank hiss, clank hiss. He pushed through a curtain of weeping willow branches and stumbled into a clearing where the 3 were locked in a stalemate. In the center stood a fallen sentinel. It was a towering suit of brass armor, but its joints were choked with emerald moss. Instead of a head, it had a glass dome filled with pressurized steam. One of its massive gauntlets was pinned to a tree by a thick, glowing vine that seemed to be drinking the oil from its gears. Scurrying around the sentinel's shoulders was a fey thief. He was small, with skin the color of a twilight sky and ears like tattered moth wings. He clutched a leather satchel that rattled with the sound of 100 chattering teeth. He was trying to pry a glowing red heartstone out of the sentinel's chestplate. "Get back, you blue parasite," a voice commanded. Stepping out from behind the sentinel was the royal daughter, Princess Alara. Her gown was shredded at the hem, and she held a silver dagger that glowed with a faint, holy light. But her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. "That stone contains the memory of my mother's voice. I won't let a forest imp hawk it for nectar." "Imp? I am a curator of curiosities," the thief squeaked, dodging a swipe from the princess. "This bucket of bolts is rusted shut. The stone is weeping, it's attracting the silk spiders. If I don't take it and bury it, we're all cocoons by midnight." Enough! Silas shouted. He held up his mender's lantern. The light pulsed a soft, calming blue, and for a moment, the aggressive vines of the grove recoiled. The diagnosis: a discord. The sentinel's glass dome fogged up. A mechanical voice wheezed from its chest. Subject: identified. Silas the Mender. My logic processes are failing. Emotion levels 98%. System overwhelmed by sadness. He's right, Silas said, stepping closer. He looked at the princess, then at the thief. The grove isn't just trapping you. It's using you to create a grief loop. The sentinel is leaking the princess's sorrow, the thief is agitated by the stolen hearts in his bag, and the princess is fueling the forest with her rage. Silas pointed up. In the high branches, the silk spiders, creatures the size of wolves made of translucent white webbing, were already descending. They didn't have eyes, they had senses that glowed whenever someone nearby felt a strong emotion. "We have to work together," Silas whispered. "Princess, give me your hand. Thief, stop clutching that bag. Sentinel, vent your steam, now." The thirst of the roots. The ground beneath them suddenly buckled. This wasn't an earthquake, it was the grove's stomach turning. The roots of a great oak surged upward like wooden serpents. One wrapped around the sentinel's leg, pulling the heavy machine toward a dark maw in the earth. Another lashed out at the thief, scattering his bag of stolen hearts across the forest floor. As the crystals hit the ground, the forest went wild. A shard of fear touched a root, and the tree began to grow jagged, black thorns. A shard of joy touched a flower, and it erupted into a blindingly bright bloom that released a cloud of hallucinogenic pollen. "The stones are reacting," the princess screamed, shielding her eyes. "They're feeding the grove," Silas yelled. He grabbed his mender's kit and pulled out a suture needle made of pure moonlight. "I have to stitch the emotions back into the stones before the trees absorb them, or this forest will become a nightmare we can never wake from." The sentinel roared, a sound of grinding metal, and used its one free arm to grab the princess, shielding her from the falling thorns. Protection. Protocol. Engaged. "Princess, do not fear. I'm not afraid," she sobbed, clinging to the brass armor. I'm so tired of being alone." At that word, alone, the grove let out a low, vibrating hum. The trees began to lean inward, their branches knitting together to form a cage. The grafting of steel and soul. The cage of branches tightened. The silk spiders were mere feet away, their translucent bodies shimmering with the reflected grief of the princess. "I can't hold them off," Silas shouted, his moonlight needle flickering. "The grove is tasting your sorrow, Alara. It's like blood in the water for a shark. Take it then," the princess cried, reaching out to the sentinel. "If my heart is what it wants, let the machine have it." Silas didn't hesitate. He grabbed a copper wire from the sentinel's exposed shoulder and pressed the other end against the princess's palm. With his mender's needle, he began the grafting. Transferring data. Influx. The sentinel wheezed. As the princess's memories of her mother flowed into the machine, the sentinel's steam turned from white to a deep, royal violet. The machine began to stand taller, its rusted joints glowing with a newfound, magical purpose. It wasn't just a soldier anymore, it was a vessel for a daughter's love. The forest roots recoiled, hissed, and pulled back, confused by the sudden shift from raw emotion to encoded memory. The thief's true burden. As the tension broke for a second, the Fey thief, scrambling to pick up his scattered heart shards, let out a choked sob. "You think I'm a scavenger?" he yelled at Silas, his moth wings trembling. "Look at the trees. Look at the bark." Silas looked closer. Underneath the moss, the trees weren't made of wood, they were made of calcified heartstones from centuries ago. "The grove isn't a monster," the thief whispered, clutching a handful of glowing shards to his chest. "It's an ancestry. Every tree is a person who gave their heart to save the world from the great cold. I wasn't stealing these to sell them. I was trying to find the key heart, the one that belongs to the mother tree. She's dying, Silas. And when she dies, the emotions of everyone in the kingdom will simply evaporate. We'll all become like the empty. The iron intrusion." The ground didn't just shake this time, it screamed. From the north, a massive, jagged shadow broke through the canopy. It was a kingdom harvester, a mountain of black iron on treads, equipped with massive, rotating diamond saws. It was designed to grind the enchanted wood into mana fuel. "There," Alara pointed. "The royal engineers. They've found us. They haven't come to rescue you, princess," Silas said grimly, watching the saws tear through a grove of silver birches. "They've come to harvest the mother tree. To them, your mother's heartstone is just a high-capacity battery." The sentinel stepped forward, its violet-tinted steam billowing. "Threat detected. Industry versus identity. Protecting the mother." The Battle of Brambles. The harvester lurched forward, its saws throwing sparks as they hit the enchanted wood. But the grove fought back. The Fey thief whistled, and thousands of silk spiders dropped from the ceiling, not onto the heroes, but onto the harvester's gears, clogging them with miles of unbreakable, sticky webbing. The princess stood atop the sentinel's shoulder, using her silver dagger to channel the sentinel's violet energy into light bolts that struck the harvester's fuel lines. Silas knelt at the roots of the mother tree. He wasn't fighting the machine, he was fighting the forest's despair. "Don't give up," Silas commanded the tree, plunging his hands into the soil. He began to stitch the stolen heart shards the thief had gathered directly into the mother tree's roots. Feel the joy of the thief. Feel the loyalty of the machine. Feel the love of the daughter. The mother tree began to pulse. A wave of emerald light erupted from the center of the grove. It didn't destroy the harvester, it transformed it. The iron began to rust at an accelerated rate, turning into rich, red soil. The diamond saws shattered, becoming harmless daisies. The soldiers inside didn't die, they simply fell out of the machine, weeping as their long-suppressed emotions suddenly flooded back into their bodies. The harvester lay still, now a hollowed-out skeleton of metal covered in flowering vines. The mother tree stood tall, its leaves no longer silver, but a vibrant, healthy green. In its center, a single, glowing fruit began to grow, the new heart of the grove. Silas stood up, his hands shaking. His mender's kit was empty. He had used every shard he possessed to save the forest. The sentinel knelt before the princess. The violet glow was fading from its glass dome. Task complete. Memory stored. I am tired. You did well, Night, Alara whispered, kissing the brass forehead of the machine. The sentinel didn't shut down. It simply became a permanent part of the grove, a statue of a protector that would stand for 1,000 years. The Fey thief sat on a root, eating a piece of enchanted fruit. Well, that was a lot of work for a Tuesday. What now, Mender? Silas looked out at the horizon. For the first time, the Enchanted Grove wasn't a place of mist and fear. It was an orchard. Now, Silas said, we go to the kingdom. I think they have a lot of mending to do. Epilogue. The Gates of Iron and Petal. The capital city of Ferrum was a place of soot and straight lines. It was built on the philosophy that nature was a resource to be tamed, and silence was a waste of production time. But today, the hum of the factories had stuttered to a halt. At the north gate, the massive iron doors, etched with the heraldry of a gear and a crown, remained shut. The guards atop the ramparts didn't level their crossbows, however. They simply stared. Emerging from the tree line was a small, strange procession. Silas walked at the front. He looked haggard, his cloak torn and his mender's kit rattling empty at his hip. Beside him walked Princess Alara. She no longer looked like the polished jewel of the court. She wore a crown made of living briar, and her eyes held a depth of green that seemed to reflect the entire forest. Trailing behind them was the Fey thief, riding atop a pack lizard laden with satchels of seeds that glowed like embers. "Open the gates!" Alara's voice rang out. It wasn't the high, thin command of a sheltered royal. It had the resonance of the mother tree's pulse. The gears groaned. The heavy iron doors swung inward, revealing a city draped in grey. The citizens stood in the streets, their faces pale. For years, they had lived, empty, trading their passions for the efficiency of the state. But as the trio entered, a strange wind followed them. It was a wind that carried the scent of the Enchanted Grove, damp earth, blooming lilies, and wild, untamed hope. Wherever Silas's shadow fell, the cracks in the cobblestones erupted with moss. Wherever the princess stepped, the rusted iron of the street lamps began to sprout tiny, silver leaves. "What have you brought back, princess?" the captain of the guard asked, his voice trembling as he felt the sudden, sharp pang of a long-forgotten memory, the smell of his mother's kitchen. "We haven't brought back a victory," Alara said, looking up at the high, smoke-stained towers of her father's palace. "We've brought back the tax you all forgot you were paying." She reached into a small pouch at her waist and pulled out a handful of the mother tree's shimmering seeds. She tossed them into the air. Instead of falling, they caught the updraft of the city's furnaces, swirling like golden fireflies over the rooftops. "The grove is no longer hidden or enchanted," Silas whispered to the thief as he watched the first green vine begin to scale the palace walls. "It's just home." The thief smirked, adjusted his moth wings, and plucked a flower that had just sprouted from the captain's rusted breastplate. "It's going to be a very messy spring, Mender." As the sun set, the city of Ferrum began to glow, not with the harsh orange of the forge, but with the soft, emerald light of a heart that had finally started beating again. And so, the city of iron learned to breathe again. Silas and Alara's journey reminds us that even in a world of cold steel and data, it is our feelings, our grief, our joy, and our love, that truly power the sun. If you enjoyed this 60-minute epic, please leave a heart emoji in the comments and let us know which character's soul you would have fought for. Don't forget to subscribe for our next tale. Until then, keep your heart close, and your magic closer. Good night.